Think about the last time you sat through an entire meal without checking your phone, or watched a full movie without pausing to scroll, or woke up and didn't reach for the screen within the first 60 seconds. If you're struggling to remember, that's not an accident, that's engineering. And the science of how it was done and what it's doing to your brain long term is more disturbing than most people realize. Right now, 210 million people around the world are addicted to something they carry in their pocket. Not alcohol, not cigarettes, not a controlled substance of any kind, an app. And the people who built it knew exactly what they were doing. Most people assume social media addiction is just a matter of weak willpower. They're wrong. Your brain was never designed to resist what these apps were engineered to exploit. Here's what's actually happening inside your head every time you open the feed. Your brain runs on a chemical called dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the reward you feel after something good happens. But that's not quite right. Dopamine isn't triggered by the reward itself. It's triggered by the anticipation of a reward you're not sure is coming. This is the key to everything. When you open Instagram or TikTok, your brain doesn't know what it's about to see. Maybe something boring. Maybe something that makes you laugh so hard you can't breathe. Maybe 50 people liked your post while you were asleep. That uncertainty, that gap between opening the app and seeing what's there, floods your brain with dopamine every single time. Psychiatrists who specialize in adolescent addiction describe platform features as exploiting the same dopamine-driven reward pathways as slot machines and other recognized forms of behavioral addiction. The science is not ambiguous. The mechanism is the same. But here's what makes social media more dangerous than a slot machine in a casino. A slot machine is bolted to the floor in a building you have to physically travel to. It stops working at 2 a.m. You can walk away from it. The slot machine in your pocket never closes. It never sleeps. And it learns. Every scroll, every pause, every like, every share, the algorithm is recording it, building a model of exactly what keeps you looking, what makes your thumb stop moving, what triggers just enough emotion to keep you from putting the phone down. This is not an accidental side effect. It is the explicit goal of every product decision these companies make. And the numbers reflect it. Approximately 82% of Gen Z adults believe they are addicted to social media. Nearly 30% of American adults say the same. These aren't people who want to be on their phones this much. Many of them feel genuinely trapped. So what happens to a brain that's trapped inside this loop, day after day, year after year? Something measurable, and it's not good. Prolonged use of social media keeps the brain's central nervous system in a state of constant high excitement. Abnormal increases in adrenaline levels, elevated blood pressure, dopamine cycles that never fully reset. Over time, the reward system recalibrates. It needs more stimulation to feel the same hit. And real life, conversations, meals, walks, the face of someone you love, starts to feel flat by comparison. Not because those things are less valuable, but because your brain has been trained to expect a faster, louder, more frequent reward than the real world can deliver. This is what researchers call reduced reward sensitivity, and it's a hallmark of addiction in the clinical sense of the word. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. In 2024, the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, told Congress directly, "We are in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis, and I'm concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, one that we must urgently address." That same year, he urged Congress to require warning labels on all social media platforms, not unlike the warnings already printed on alcohol and cigarettes, because of their addictive nature and documented harm. This wasn't a fringe opinion. This was the top medical official in the United States, using the same institutional language reserved for the most serious public health threats in American history. And here's why he's particularly worried about young people. The teenage brain isn't a smaller version of an adult brain. It's a brain in a fundamentally different state of development. The part of the brain that craves social validation, that needs to feel liked, accepted, seen, is fully active from early adolescence. But the part of the brain that regulates impulse control and long-term decision-making doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s. So you have a system screaming for social approval, wired directly into the most socially engineered product ever built, with almost no internal check on how much is too much. Roughly 42% of teens say social media keeps them from connecting with friends in person. More than 70% report feeling left out or excluded because of it. These are not small numbers. An entire generation is growing up with a distorted signal for what real connection feels like. But the most alarming consequence of social media addiction isn't what it does to people on their phones. It's what it does to them when the phone stops being enough. In Japan, there's a word, hikikomori, literally pulling inward. It describes someone who withdraws from society entirely for 6 months or more. No school, no work, no social contact outside the home. For decades, researchers considered this a uniquely Japanese problem, tied to specific cultural pressures around academic and professional failure. In 2025, a major international review drew on 19 studies and over 58,000 participants across multiple countries. Their finding was unambiguous. The global prevalence rate of severe social withdrawal is 8%, and that rate did not differ significantly between East Asian and Western countries. This is not a Japanese problem anymore. It never really was. South Korea reports over 5% of young people showing signs of hikikomori-like isolation. Italy estimates around 100,000 young people living in complete social withdrawal, in a country famous for its strong family culture and social life. In Japan itself, national surveys suggest 1.46 million people of all ages are affected, with the government now appointing a dedicated minister for social isolation and loneliness in response. And researchers studying the link between social media and this kind of withdrawal found something that surprised even them. You'd assume that someone retreating from the physical world would be glued to their phone, using social media as a substitute for real contact. And in the early stages, that's often true. But as withdrawal deepens, something shifts. A 2025 study found that as hikikomori progresses to its most severe stage, social media use actually begins to decrease. People stop posting, stop replying, stop engaging even online. By the time someone has been withdrawn for a year or more, they may not be on social media at all. They are simply gone from both worlds at once. This is the end of the road that no one talks about, not phone addiction, but the collapse that follows it. Now here's the number that should stop you cold. In his landmark advisory on loneliness and isolation, U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy stated that lacking social connection can increase the risk of premature death as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Not feeling sad, not being unhappy, early death, on the scale of a pack of cigarettes. Loneliness and social isolation are now more widespread than smoking, obesity, and diabetes combined as public health risks in the United States. The economic cost of loneliness alone is estimated at $400 billion a year to the U.S. economy. And the platforms that were supposed to connect us more than any technology in human history are for a growing number of people doing the opposite. And perhaps the most telling signal of all comes from inside the industry itself. Steve Jobs, who introduced the original iPhone to the world, told a journalist his own children didn't use iPads. Bill Gates didn't allow smartphones for his kids until they were 14. Former engineers at Google and Apple who spent years designing the notification systems, the recommendation engines, and the infinite scroll, many have spoken publicly about keeping their own children away from the products they built. When the architects of a system quietly opt their own families out of it, that's not a coincidence. That's information. So here is the question this leaves us with. We regulate cigarettes because we know they cause lung cancer. We regulate alcohol because we know it damages lives. We require pharmaceutical companies to list side effects on every product they sell. These platforms were built with full knowledge of the dopamine loops they were exploiting, full knowledge of the adolescent brains they were targeting, full knowledge of what prolonged use does to reward sensitivity, to real-world connection, to the capacity to feel present anywhere but on the screen. At what point does a product that is engineered to be as addictive as possible, sold without any warning to children as young as 10, become something we treat with the same seriousness as every other addiction crisis in American history? The feed will always be there when you put the phone down. The question is whether the life you're not living will be. If you want to understand the real forces shaping how we think, how we feel, and how we connect, subscribe. New deep dives every week.